Hi, this is Jay. Let me just start off by saying that I really like all of you people in that video. I really like you people. I really appreciated that video. I don't really know how to start with talking about why that is. Well, I guess one easy way to say it is that question, should genderqueers transition, is a question that I've just been totally consumed with for the past 6 or 7 years, maybe. But I think it's only within the past week or two, like very recently, that I've kind of identified that as the question. Because I always connected that question to, am I trans or not? Like, in my mind, transitioning meant you were trans. Not wanting to transition meant you weren't trans. And even though I knew non-binary identities existed, I was perfectly well aware of that, and I guess, in a sense, considered it for myself. But for some reason, only recently, I've really been able to accept that for myself fully. Yeah, like, if somebody else said they were that identity, I would fully support them. Like, politically, I supported that. But I just think that seeing on YouTube all these binary identified people, and people talking about dysphoria in a very particular way, I guess made me feel like in order for my dysphoria to be valid, I had to be binary identified. It's only been recently that I've really been able to accept that I don't need to be binary identified to feel valid in the dysphoria I have and the very real desires I have to transition, for all of that to be valid. That can be valid, and also the side of me that doesn't want to transition is valid and legitimate. Both exist in me. Only, like, seriously, I've only really recently been able to accept this, and I feel so good. Not having to feel like I have to pick one or the other. Yeah, it's a lot of years of struggling with that. That's not to say that I've got it all figured out, and that I'm not struggling anymore, because there's still that question, should I transition or not? But thinking about it from the perspective of being genderqueer and having both sides exist in me, having that be me, from that perspective, it just, everything just feels a lot more calm taking that on. And hearing everybody's conversations about this from that perspective too, it just resonated with me more. It felt less forced in a way. I feel like I wasn't trying to relate 100%. Like how I feel sometimes hearing binary people talking about transition. Yeah. So I like hearing these kind of conversations. Yeah, I guess while, yeah, I guess this process of accepting myself as genderqueer has had a lot of positive aspects. It just has made me feel a lot more calm. It is kind of realizing that this question of transitioning is really hard. I think I really wanted to identify as a binary trans man because then there's this obvious, clear path. But as all of you were discussing, it's not so clear for us. When people in general talk about hating their body or feeling insecure with their body, the general response, the general belief is that you need to learn to accept your body, to accept yourself and love yourself. But for trans people, it's not that path. A lot of the times. Instead, it's seen as necessary to change your body to do the opposite. And I'm definitely not advocating that if people feel like they need transition, that they shouldn't. But I guess I've never been able to articulate why that's different. Why somebody who wants to diet dangerously in order to change their body because they're feeling insecure is different from somebody who's trans and feels so dysphoric about their body that they need to transition. Just sort of like ethically, I can't articulate why that's different, and that's always been a big source of anxiety and shame for me when thinking about the prospect of transitioning. And I guess the fact that I am genderqueer and have both of these sides to me, one that really desires transition and one that doesn't, it makes that question even trickier in my mind. Is there even more of an ethical, moral obligation to learn to accept my body if I do partially already, that there is a side of me that already does? Like, is there a moral obligation to cling to that side as much as possible? Or is it really not about that? Is it really about figuring out which side is stronger? Or is there some control you can have in trying to learn how to, I don't know, trying to learn how to cultivate the side that doesn't want to transition more? I don't know. But I guess the point of saying you have an identity is to say that you can't change those things, that they're who you are. So I don't really know. Maybe that's not the question. But the fact that I can't articulate why you shouldn't change your body, like fully articulate that, definitely makes me nervous. That scared me. Although I guess I kind of said it earlier. How the point is that an identity is something that's in you that you can't change. You can't change those desires. Somebody who's anorexic, for example, has an eating disorder, they can change that. Arguably, maybe some suffer with it throughout their lives, but I don't think anybody argues that it's something somebody's like innately born with and can't ever change that. Yeah, so that was neat. Just came up with a new way of thinking about that while just talking about this right now. Cool. Yeah. I don't know if I have more to say right now. I want to, I guess, just mention or point out is this idea that was brought up of not being sure, but being sure that you couldn't not try it. Excuse me. I guess I never really considered that to be a moral reason to transition. And so hearing that and thinking about transition in that way, again, it's made me calmer thinking about it. I still don't know if I definitely will, but it makes sense for me, definitely in a big way. Maybe I need to let myself not be so consumed with that question, because it's not living in the moment when I'm in those kinds of anxious moods thinking about that question. I need to learn how to just let go more. Maybe transitioning is the only way to let go. I don't know. For me, those feelings of being overwhelmed is very much related to my depression and anxiety. Like, all of that feeds into it. So I think working on those things for me can help this process of these questions I have about my gender and transitioning. So I don't know, maybe for people who are going through these questions, maybe especially if they aren't binary identified, if they suffer with those types of mental illnesses, that could be, I don't know, a perspective to look at it, to think how much of this is being fed into by those illnesses. Like, how much focus should be on the gender questions as opposed to the emotional health questions. Something I just want to throw out there too. Yeah, I think that's basically all of my thoughts. Sorry if this was a little all over the place, but again, I really appreciated this conversation, and I really look forward to hearing more of these kind of conversations from these non-binary perspectives. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.